Good morning. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I remembered we were in church and not some cool concert venue. Good morning, everyone. Morning. Are we awake? Are we here and ready? Mostly. I'm Mary Beth. I'll be your service leader today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola. Thank you so much for being here. If this is your first time, a big welcome. I'm sure you were greeted by one of our lovely greeters by the door and got a pamphlet telling you about our church, but if not, you can grab one on the way out, or you can go to our website. It has everything you need to know about our church and about Unitarian Universalists in general. So there's that. I'll take a minute to remind you to please silence your devices. Please and thank you. Did I say my name already? Mary Beth? She, her? Thanks. Christmas. I'm fine. It's a great time. But yeah, I need a vacation. Okay, so you got pamphlets at the door, maybe if you're new. If you're joining us online, thank you so much for visiting our YouTube channel and for tuning in. Thank you. And for those of you returning, thanks for coming back. Good to see you again. We're a lay-led congregation, for those of you who don't know, so we have different speakers every week, sometimes reoccurring ones. Today we have a reoccurring one that visits us often, a good friend of the church, but we have different people from around the community, and so just a different perspective and view on life every Sunday, which is super cool. So there's that, and anything else you need to know, you can find it on our website or just ask one of the people that is smiling at you and that you don't recognize. And I'm sure they can tell you all about us. So we're happy to have you. Welcome. I'm going to light our chalice, but before I do, actually, let's get some, I think we need to wake up a little. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But turn to your neighbor and please tell them, Happy Almost New Year. Happy Almost New Year. Happy almost New Year. 2026. What? Crazy. Okay, I'm going to ask Pat if she will light the chalice while I read these words here. We light our chalice to remind ourselves of our highest aspirations, to inspire us to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle. Thank you, Pat. All right, who's ready to sing?
Yeah, I am.
Yes, I'm going to invite the choir up, and then if you want to grab a hymnal under your chair in front or right underneath you, it's this one, and we're going to sing the first Noel, number 237. And the choir and musicians will lead us in that. And if you're willing and able to stand and sing with us, that would be great. Singing is always better standing. And if you'll want to stay standing afterwards, we'll say our covenant together. you. If you'll stay standing, we'll say our covenant together, which will be up on the screen here. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, choir. This next part of our service is just for today, just for here, those of us in our community, in this congregation. It's a time for joys and sorrows, and we can share it with each other. Something that's been laying heavy on your hearts and you need help carrying that burden, or something that you're really psyched about and you want us to share it with you and celebrate with you. So again, it's not recorded, so nobody will see it, just us for today. And so if you'd like to share, briefly, please, just share your name and briefly what you want to share with us, and you can line up on either side here and we'll light a candle for you. And I will light a first one because obviously we can light lots and lots of candles for things going on in the world, but to save time and flame, we'll just light the one, and that's a big representation of everything going on in the world that is both joyful and lots of sorrows. So we'll light that candle, and then, yeah, if you want to line up on either side. And just if you didn't notice the sign, children, we don't have childcare today. So I think there's some illnesses. So maybe we should have lit a candle for that. But so y'all get to stay in here with us today. Yay! But we do have a special treat. Carla and Pat, right? Pat and Carla, y'all are going to read a story for us. And we have it up here.
Some of you may remember a little earlier in the year, we introduced you to our two therapy dogs, Sophie and Simon, who are also kind of literary. And they have written a seasonal story, and we'll start with that today as a way of introducing A Christmas Carol and Charles Dickens, who will be the kind of the topic of the main message today. Simon stretched out on the bed, his paws tucked neatly under him. Sophie, he said, tilting his head, you know, since it's Christmas, I've been thinking about the story, A Christmas Carol. It seems simple, but I know Dickens was saying something big. Can you walk me through it?
Sophie settled beside him, her tail giving one thoughtful thump. Sure, it all starts with Scrooge, this lonely, grumpy old man who thinks caring about other people is a waste of time. He's not cruel for fun. He's just built walls so high he can't see past them anymore.
So he wasn't always like that, Simon asked?
No, Sophie replied. He was not. When he was young, he had friends like most of us, but he cut himself off from them. In the story, he gets a visit from some Christmas ghosts at night, and they take him through his past and his present and future life. The first ghost of Christmas past takes him back to his childhood, years when he longed for warmth and connection, but rarely received it. He is able to see himself.
Simon slowly nodded. Then the next ghost says, Christmas present?
Exactly, Sophie said. That spirit pulls back the curtain on the world around Scrooge right now. He sees families making the best of very little, children forced to work in dangerous mines and factories, and the Cratchit family, who he knows, trying to stay cheerful despite their struggle to put food on the table. Tiny Tim Cratchit becomes the symbol of every vulnerable person society overlooks. The ghost of present is saying, look, don't turn away from suffering.
Simon's ears drooped sympathetically. Scrooge never noticed any of that because he didn't want to look, right?
Right, Sophie answered. But the ghost of Christmas yet to come forces him to see what his life is leading to, a future where no one mourns his death because he never connected with anyone. It's frightening, but it's also honest. I think Scrooge must have finally seen that a life like his, without compassion, ultimately becomes a lonely and empty one.
Simon leaned closer. And then Scrooge changes?
He does, Sophie said softly. That's the heart of the story. He realizes he still has time to open himself to others, to take responsibility, to be generous with both his resources and his heart, to make his world better. Scrooge's transformation isn't just about being nicer at Christmas. It's about choosing a better way to live every day, a way that tells us we must look around us at the plight of others and not just think selfishly, to show compassion for one another and get involved in service to others.
Sophie, I know that was a long time ago, but did people pay attention to what Charles Dickens wrote?
Yes, Sophie said. People realized that he wasn't just telling a ghost story for a holiday.
Simon nodded his head. He was pushing people to see their society differently.
Sophie wagged her tail. Exactly. He wanted readers to remember that poverty isn't a personal failure, that joy and kindness are moral forces, and that communities grow stronger when we take care of each other.
So people understood this message, Simon asked.
They did, Sophie exclaimed, perking up her long ears. People started being more charitable. There were even some laws passed about where and how long children could work.
Simon sighed contentedly. Telling this story and letting folks see that failing to pay attention to the lives of others can cause harm helped people care about others. That's actually a really important message. And it makes the whole story feel hopeful.
Sophie nudged Simon with her shoulder. That was Dickens' gift, showing people that it's never too late to wake up, treat the people around you with fairness and kindness, and remember, we are all part of the human family.
Simon smiled. Sounds like a perfect message for Christmas and all year long.
Thank you. Okay, so I figured I'd try something new and save the announcements for right at offertory, which is now. What do you guys think? Okay, I'll leave it. I'll put it back to the normal place next time. I'm lying. I totally forgot about announcements. I'm sorry. So sorry. Okay, there are a couple, and then we'll get the offertory going. Today, after service in the library, get yourself a snack. For those of you who don't know, we have snacks in the conference room. So grab a snack and then go to the library because the long-term planning committee is having their second listening session. If you guys don't know the details of that, pop on into the library and ask them about it. But it's basically just planning our next 5 years for our church, what we hope to see. And so this is the second of 10 listening sessions. So you still have opportunities, but don't wait and forget and put it off like I did the announcements. Also, Sunday cleanup. We've made this announcement a few times, but just for good measure, we'll say it a few more times. On the bulletin board, just right outside in the foyer, there's a sign-up sheet to be a regular helper after Sunday refreshments. We have that every Sunday, and we have generous people who give treats and bring homemade goodies and stuff, so we want to help them by not making them cook and clean. So if you can sign up for that, it's super easy, taking out the trash, picking up dishes, just straightening up. And if multiple people sign up, then hopefully you only have to do it like once every month or two. So if you could do that, that would be great. We're still collecting for the Manna Food Pantry. Canned goods is definitely something they need. They get fresh things given to them and donated by grocery stores. So really things perishable, right? Like things that last a long time. And is it non-perishable? I had the puzzled look on my face, like that's not right. Thank you. Why didn't you call me out when I forgot the announcements? I'm like, I can't believe nobody yelled at me. Thank you. Yes, okay, so non-perishables, thank you so much. And we're still collecting that out in the foyer. I think there's a big basket there. So please give to that, like Charles Dickens' carol point of that. And then circle dinners, we're starting those back up. And if you don't know what that is, it's a great way to meet people from your community, maybe have a conversation with people that you've seen from across the sanctuary, but haven't had a chance to actually talk to. And if you have questions and want to be involved in that, I think you can still see Linda Cobb or talk to her. Email her? Yeah, okay, so she's still a superstar and will probably continue to help with that, even though she's, going through recovery. So if you don't have her email, it's in the church directory, or you can see me after church and I'll give it to you. And then lastly, I'm going to ask the greeters to come up and pass around the baskets. Offertory is now, and we're not affiliated or connected to like a larger, basically we run off of what you all are able and willing to give us. So we'll take up that treasure now, but I will say before we start passing, this is the last Sunday to give to our church workers, so the people that help around the church, honor being the big one. And so anything that isn't marked in the basket today will go towards our staff here as kind of a big thank you for all that you do. So if you want something to go to something specifically, make sure you mark it. And there's envelopes out there. So, but anyway, thank you so much for contributing to our staff. We love them so much, and we appreciate y'all's generous donations. Yeah, y'all want to pass around the baskets? Are we going to have the music, or would you mind? Oh, yeah, yeah. Do it. Lead us.
You guys know that one, right? Yeah, I've heard that before. Close my heart to one of us. I close my heart to one and all. Yeah. In a way, in a prayer, I'm asking courage. Yeah, so close my heart to one of us. I close my heart to one and all. In a way, in a prayer, I'm asking courage and nothing more. Let me go. Give me love, give me love, give me love, give me love. And I want to hear a lot of out of tune, please. In a way, in a prayer, I'm asking courage and nothing more. Repeat that now. Close my heart to one of us. I close my heart to one and all. In a way, in a prayer, I'm asking courage and nothing more. One more time. Close my heart to one of us. I close my heart to one and all. In a way, in a prayer, I'm asking courage. Give me love. You guys are in tune.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Well, it's my privilege to introduce our speaker today, Pat Gleich. She's a longtime friend of our church and a valued member of our community. She's a doctorate in social science and sociology and is here today to give us a different perspective on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, if you hadn't already caught that hint. Help me welcome Pat Gleich.
So on this last Sunday of the year, peace be with you. Thank you. So you heard our take on the Christmas Carol. We tried to sort of Simon and Sophie tried to extract sort of the essence of the story. Dickens, which I studied as an undergraduate English major, I studied him as a writer, but I didn't study him as a social scientist. And as Mary Beth found out, I did a very deep dive into Charles Dickens when I was preparing this, and I found out way too much about him. And so she had to pull me back, reel me in, as it were. So I will try to highlight a few things about Dickens. He was much more connected to the British Unitarian Church than I had known, and that we might typically hear about if we have just studied him as a writer. The Christmas Carol was actually his way of really calling the public's attention, raising the public's awareness to things that were going on in society that many of them, as Scrooge did, kind of tried to dismiss or tried to avoid thinking about or looking at. And He had originally decided that he would write a pamphlet and just lay out some of the social issues he saw from that time. And then he changed his mind and decided to make his point through an actual story. And as any of us who have worked in advocacy know, if you can put a face on an issue, you will get more attention for your issue than just basically laying out an issue. And I probably didn't remember that enough as I was preparing this message because it's going to get kind of dry. But Dickens did remember it. And not only A Christmas Carol, but other books that he wrote were intended to be literary, but also to focus on things that he saw should be changed in society. So he was born into a family that was Church of England, Anglican. That was the national church, and so the vast majority of people in England belonged to the Anglican Church. As he got older, Dickens' life changed. Originally, his family was middle class, but his father made some financial errors, shall we say, and ended up in debtor's prison. And Dickens' kind of easy, smooth, middle-class life was upended when his father went to jail. He was forced to leave school, and as a young teen, he was forced into work to help support his family. And as he began working at the age of 12, he saw a side of society that he hadn't seen before. And he not only saw the working class and how poor and working class people were treated, he was now one of those people, and he saw how he was treated. And so he kind of worked his way from being in a labor position to, because he was very bright, to becoming a shorthand reporter. And finally, he became a newspaper reporter, and that's what really launched his writing career. And the books we know, Oliver Twist dealt with child labor in workhouses. David Copperfield dealt with child labor in debtors' prisons and kind of mirrored what had happened in Dickens' life. Hard Times looked at industrial exploitation. Bleak House looked at laws imposed on the poor. And then we have The Christmas Carol that I've already talked about. So he was writing to expose social injustices, poverty, and the harsh conditions that he saw. Now, at this point in time, if we look at the history, England was experiencing the Industrial Revolution. And so we saw things like population shift from rural areas to more urban areas because that's where one could become employed. And if we kind of look behind what was happening, if we look at what we think of in sociology as sort of the macro view here, what we were seeing was not only a shift in population from rural areas to urban areas, we saw a shift in what was the basis for wealth. Until the Industrial Revolution, the basis for wealth was land. And so agriculture, agrarian work, large land holdings were the source of power. But when the shift from rural to urban areas happened, wealth became tied to money, to the things that, the profit that came from manufacturing. And so we saw a class system that others of this time wrote about. The difference between people who were workers and often exploited and those who were the owner class or the wealth class, whose motive was profit. And so ways to increase profit, regardless of how that ended up being the plight of people who were workers or the poor, became the dividing line in society. So if we look at not just the dividing line in society as being class, if we look at it beyond that as how wealth governed things, then that explains a lot of what was happening at that point in time. And this is the point at which Dickens broke with the Church of England, mostly broke with the Church of England. He decided that as a state church or state-sanctioned church, that England wasn't a theocracy, but there were too much overlap between what the state's message was and what the church's message was. And so he became interested in countries where this was not the case. And so he followed his good friend Harriet Martineau to the United States because he wanted to see and experience a country where religion and state were not tied together. Sound a little contemporary? Yes, those who forget history are destined to repeat it, yeah. So he came to the U.S., and it was suggested that he get to know William Channing, who was a Unitarian pastor in Boston. And so he and Channing began having conversations, and that is when Dickens decided the Unitarians had an approach to social justice and society that he could agree with. This notion that, and the same words that we see in our covenant today, that social awareness, looking beyond what's happening in our own lives. Charity, a word we don't typically use, but being able to care about others and provide financial support or be sure that everyone is supported. And so as he became more and more drawn to the Unitarian Church, and the other thing I want to say is Dickens was an intellectual. And so one of the things he found in the Unitarian Church was a fertile area to discuss what was happening in society. And so he was drawn not only to the tradition, the religious tradition, but he was drawn to the pastors that he met. In the U.S., it was Channing. When he went back to England, he affiliated with Essex House, which was the first Unitarian church established in England in 1774. And so he affiliated there, and Edward Taggart was the pastor there. And they developed a very deep friendship, a deep and fertile friendship for discussing things that were happening. And so Dickens was not just moved as he found this place that fit his way of looking at society, but it reinforced his ideas that there needed to be a broader message in society about how we treat other people and being sure that people are treated with fairness and justice. So, as I said, economic conditions, people were divided into the two classes. Some of the things that were part of this Industrial Revolution, workers were not allowed to unionize. Factory and mine workers worked 12 to 16 hours a day with minimal breaks. The machinery was dangerous, and there were no regulations whatsoever on the safety. And one of the things I think that profoundly affected him was seeing that children, and have we got that photo somewhere here? Go back one. Children were forced to work in mines because children were shorter And the tunnels that they had to dig in order to get to the coal didn't have to be as tall. And so children were forced into labor in the mines, and that really affected him. And so he really, and you can see in many of his books, he wrote about children. He focused on children and the plight of children. And so he was concerned about them, and they would be forced to work 12 to 16 hours a day. Now, at that point in time, side note, at that point in time, children were basically understood as little adults. Modern childhood, such as we see today, was not a thing at that point in time, 200 years ago. Children were seen as little adults, and families had as many children as they could possibly have because they needed children to help support the family, whether they worked on the farm or whether they were in the cities. And so often children were employed in places in tight crevices, with machinery that had very little room to operate because children were smaller, their hands were smaller. And so he saw this as unfairness. Women and children were paid far less than men were paid, and men were underpaid. So women and children were vastly underpaid. And the government at this point in time had what was considered a laissez-faire, hands-off policy. The other thing that happened as this shift of population from rural areas to urban areas happened, urban areas did not have the infrastructure to support all these people who were suddenly there. And so slum areas, very, very crowded housing, oftentimes families lived in one room. And so we saw that happening, and it was a dirty place. The cities were dirty places. And so what we saw with this overcrowding and the filthy environment people lived in was it became breeding grounds for cholera, typhoid, smallpox. Life expectancy in cities like Liverpool and London plummeted to as low as 26 years by 1840. So, Dickens had a strong commitment to trying to see things change. Now, in addition to looking at the setting of the economy, what we'll call what's happening in the population, it's important, I think, to look at the stance of the major religious traditions, because that's part of what kind of forced Dickens to look elsewhere and find the Unitarian Church. There was so much overlap between the Anglican Church and the government that was hands off for what was happening with industry, and the wealthy people, that the church basically sanctioned what was happening. Now, I'm generalizing here, and we are talking about an Anglican church of 200 years ago, so I don't want to offend anybody who comes from that church background. But the Anglican church was pretty much set up at that point in time to reinforce the hereditary wealth, the people who were the owners. And so the church did not want to disturb this relationship by suggesting that perhaps the poor should not be exploited. So the position of the church was more that the poor should get charity if they deserved it, if they're worthy. And workers were seen as people who needed moral discipline. So they needed the examples of, workers needed the examples of the wealthy people so that they would know how to live. And this reinforced what was happening in society. So the emphasis of the Anglican Church toward workers was charity, noblesse oblige, moral instruction, and trying to keep society stable, avoiding change, avoiding things in people who were calling for change. Now, some people left the Anglican Church, and that's where a lot of the Unitarians came from, because they did not agree with the policies. But the traditional stance, again, in generalized terms, of the church was, well, we'll see that they have the best life that they can, those workers, but they're not like us. Now, the other religious thing that was happening at that point in time was the Calvinists, the evangelicals. Now, they kind of had their ideas about workers as well. And this is where, and I would still be here Tuesday if I went into detail, but we're not going to talk about repentance in the Christian sense. We're not going to talk about salvation. But the evangelicals thought workers were more valuable if they converted and if they repented for whatever ills they must have done to cause them to be living in the particular situation they were living in. Because if you were poor, if you were struggling, obviously it was because of something you did. A moral failure, a character flaw, not trying hard enough. And so for the evangelical churches, the test for somebody to be worthy of help was to come around to their way of thinking. Now, we still see a little bit of that in our society today, too. They kind of divided the poor into the deserving and the undeserving. And to be deserving, you had to agree with the message. And so we're seeing these traditions that, unlike what Dickens found with the Unitarians, would help people, but it was conditional. The thing that was different about the Unitarians was it was unconditional. The Unitarians, even 200 years ago, believed in the inherent goodness of humans and the possibility that we all could be better off than we were. And we weren't penalizing people because they weren't as well off as some others here. And so the British Unitarians became very critical of the very rigid class structure in England. And they saw social position and wealth as human-made arrangements. And they saw the structures of society as being geared toward keeping certain people down and lifting other people up. Again, sound familiar? Workers were seen as rational, educable moral agents, and poverty was seen as structural, shaped by wages, hours, housing, and safety rather than personal failure. Grounded in a theology of human dignity, reason, and moral progress, Unitarians actively advocated for factory reform, child labor limits, education, public health, and broader social change. And I'm not going to go through this because it's just part of the dry thing. But if we look at certain aspects of society, like class inequality, we can see that among Anglicans it was largely accepted. Among evangelicals, it was accepted secondary to salvation. And Unitarians acknowledged that it existed, but they examined it, and the goal was to help inequality diminish. The cause of poverty, Anglicans, moral failure, evangelicals, sin, and Unitarian structural conditions. And you can kind of see the rest of it there. So there were big differences in how society was viewed by the major traditions. And there were other sects and other traditions, but evangelicals and Anglicans were the two largest ones. Now the thing that's interesting then, and I hope still is something we remember, if you look at the size of the British Unitarian Church, compared to the Anglican Church, compared to the various evangelical denominations, we have always been tiny, but mighty. And so compared to the numerical strength of the larger denomination, Unitarians have always outperformed the voices in society, the way society has been made aware by what Unitarians believe and Unitarians advocate has always been much bigger than numerically we have been. And so I think we need to, again, remember that today. One of the other things I want to talk about, one of my favorite words is benevolence. We all like to think of ourselves as benevolent, right? Good people, benevolent people. So among the British Unitarians, benevolence was unconditional. It was justice-oriented compassion. That means they didn't decide, well, these people should be taken care of, but not these people. And if we look at the other two large traditions, because the Anglican Church was so tied to the hierarchy of the nation, paternal care within an ordered society was advocated. Relieve suffering, but maintain social order. Don't give them too much. Don't let them take over. Moral instruction. Be sure that they do not waste what they are given. Be sure people are not taking their public assistance check and buying drugs. Oh, I'm sorry, that's today. But these ideas that there are people who don't deserve our help because they're bad or they're wasteful or they make poor decisions, that piece, which the Puritans nicely carried out in the United States, that piece is still embedded in our society. Have you noticed? And if a person can be made to appear unworthy, illegal, then we don't want to help them. Because they, one, don't deserve our help, and who knows what they'll do with the assistance that they're given. So one of the reasons I kind of wanted to look at these different stances is to show that this was 200 years ago, almost 200 years ago, but it hasn't gone away. It's just kind of gotten more deeply embedded in society. And the problem with things that get deeply embedded in society is we don't notice them. They are normalized. And so Dickens' message, I think, is as relevant today as it was 200 years ago. To see people in a justice-oriented way, to work for justice, to work for fairness and equality, was relevant 200 years ago, and we still see it as a part of the Unitarian beliefs today. Now, there was progress made as a result of Dickens' efforts and other people who were working as advocates. And One of the people who talked about the benefit of Dickens' approach talked about that his stories hit people at an emotional level. I mean, actually wrote that 200 years ago and talked about how that was a beacon of light into the darkness of the way the treatment of workers was. And as I said, over time, and even mostly after Dickens' death, Dickens did not live to be very old. I mean, he was 58 when he died, so just a little bit after mid-century. But the view in England, at least of most workers, probably not workers who came from other countries within the British Empire, because we had the whole colonial race thing coming in. And again, I'm not going to talk about all this because I'd be here till Wednesday. But workers were finally seen not as private resources of employers, but as citizens whose welfare affected society. Now that includes the other idea, which came more from the Unitarians, certainly than the traditions, is that what affects one of us affects all of us. And this universality of humanity. So some of the things that are tied, some of the changes that were made that tied directly to Dickens, child labor and education, protecting children became seen as a moral obligation. Profit without conscience, some profits became morally unacceptable. And the change in attitude established at least beginnings of governmental oversight of private industry, which was a radical idea at that time. Overwork and human dignity. Human dignity outweighed unlimited productivity. People were not machines. Private neglect caused public suffering. Laws recognized that worker health affected society as a whole, not just individual employees. Poverty and moral judgment. Change, poverty not seen as a moral failure, poverty increasingly seen as structural. Transformation through connection. Workers began to gain collective power, and we saw unionization and collective responsibility for poverty. So those were the changes in society, the laws that came as a result of what Dickens and others of his time who were advocates for workers gave us. So that is the end of, well, I'm out of time. I'm out of time, which is usual, and that's the end. Thank you. Sure. So let us have some closing words here. Dickens taught us that suffering is not a verdict on a person's worth. The Unitarian tradition reminds us that compassion must reach beyond charity. Advocacy for today's Unitarian Church is compassion made public. Unitarians have rarely been the largest voice in the room, but we have changed what the room is willing to hear. Let's remember that. That may be our strength. May we continue to be a people who do more than feel compassion, who give it voice and shape and action. May our care reach beyond charity, and our hope find expression in justice. Bless be. And thank you for tolerating my wordiness.
We appreciate it. Band's ready. Let's bring the choir up and we'll sing a closing song on our way out. It's in the Gray hymnal, number 253, O Come All Ye Faithful. And I think there's some Latin in there, but we're not singing the Latin. We're going to sing except for the refrain, but English. We'll figure it out. 253, if you guys want to stand and sing with us, that'd be great. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a wonderful 2025, I think, for the most part. We'll say it, yeah, good. And 2026 is going to be even better. Happy New Year. We love you so much. Go in peace. Play us out. That was really good.
Yeah.